So what if I told you that the 11 dimensions of string theory, those crazy, mind-bending mathematical realms that quantum physicists spend their entire lives searching for out in the furthest reaches of deep space, what if they aren't actually out there at all?
Right, what if they're much closer?
Exactly. What if, right at this very second, all 11 of those dimensions are actually curled up, functioning, and vibrating right inside your own body?
I mean, it's a premise that totally forces us to just tear down the boundary between astrophysics and human biology.
Yeah.
We spend billions of dollars building these massive telescopes to look for the fundamental architecture of the universe out in the stars.
Yeah, we're always looking outward.
Always. But the framework we are analyzing today posits that true scientific and even philosophical enlightenment actually comes from turning that telescope completely inward. The idea is that the structure of the cosmos and the structure of the human being aren't just similar, they are identical.
Which is just a wild concept, and that is exactly what we are going to act as detectives to uncover today.
Yes, we have a lot to unpack.
We really do. So our source material for this deep dive is part 1 of an incredibly dense, fiercely fascinating document. It's titled The Multidimensional Macro-Micro Quantum Coherence Matrix.
Quite a mouthful, I know.
It is, yeah. It's co-authored by Swami Vivekananda and Gemini AI, and it sits right at this bleeding edge where advanced quantum mechanics, neurobiology, and ancient philosophical concepts of consciousness all kind of intersect.
Right in the middle of all of them.
Yeah. And our mission today is just to unpack part 1 of this text and translate its profound claims into something we can actually understand and apply. So for you, the listener, I need to ask you to do something a bit difficult.
Just for the next hour or so.
Right. Temporarily forget everything you think you know about your physical body. Forget the reflection in the mirror. Forget, medical x-rays. Prepare to zoom in to the very quantum fabric of your reality.
Let's start with the most glaring question. If I have 11 dimensions functioning inside of me right now, what on earth are they? And why am I completely unaware of them when I'm just, trying to make my morning coffee? Well, the source document actually does a remarkable job of breaking these 11 dimensions down. It puts them into 4 distinct progressive categories.
Okay.
And they move from the densest form of reality to the most subtle. So to understand the ones you can't see, we first have to rigorously define the ones you can see. The first category consists of the physical dimensions.
Which are?
Dimensions 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, that part feels pretty intuitive. I mean, this is the 3D reality we navigate every day, right? Length, width, and depth.
Correct, yeah. But the text asks us to look at them as developmental building blocks. So the first dimension is essentially a line just length. Biologically, you can think of this as the vertical axis of your body.
Right, head to toe.
Exactly. Then the second dimension introduces width, which creates a flat, plane unilateral structure. But it's the third dimension, depth or mass, that actually gives us the fleshy, tangible body of muscle, bone, and organs.
The meat suit, basically.
Yeah. Exactly, the meat suit. This 3D construct is the absolute densest expression of matter. It is heavy, it requires immense energy to move around, and it is entirely bound by the physical laws of gravity and inertia. But immediately after this, we cross a threshold into the second category, which is the temporal dimension.
And that's the 4th dimension, time.
Yes.
Okay, so in standard physics, Einstein taught us that space and time are woven together into this 4D fabric, space-time. But how does this text apply the 4th dimension specifically to the internal human experience?
Well, it applies it as the biological and experiential timeline of your specific existence. In physics, like you said, the 4th dimension is just the coordinate of time. But in your body, the 4th dimension is the entire trajectory from your birth to your death.
Oh, wow.
It encompasses your memories, the accumulation of your experiences, and the literal physical aging and decaying of your cellular structure. Without the 4th dimension, your 3D body would just be a static, frozen snapshot. The 4th dimension is what allows biological processes to actually unfold.
Right, because without time, nothing can move. Okay, I'm tracking with 3D space and 4D time. That's relatively straightforward and aligns with the standard model of physics.
It does.
But applying dimensions 5 and up to a human being, that sounds like we are crossing a hard line from physics into metaphysics. How does the text justify bridging that gap? What actually are dimensions 5 through 7?
This is where the framework becomes profoundly radical. The text categorizes dimensions 5 through 7 as the internal or psychological dimensions.
Psychological.
Yes. It argues that consciousness and psychology are not merely side effects of a 3D brain, but actual structural dimensions of reality that our consciousness navigates. So the fifth dimension is defined as the realm of thought and alternate choices.
Wait, let me stop you there. Are you saying that my capacity to make a choice is literally a dimension of space-time?
Yeah. If we look at the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, every time a quantum event occurs, the universe splits into branching timelines.
Right, the multiverse idea.
Exactly. The text applies a macro version of this to human psychology. Every time you face a choice, say choosing between two different career paths, you are structurally standing at a fifth-dimensional crossroads.
Really?
Yeah, the act of weighing, what if I take this job versus what if I move to that city? Is your consciousness actively navigating the fifth dimension of branching possibilities?
So my regret over, say, not investing in a certain stock 10 years ago, that isn't just a chemical firing in my hippocampus. That is me actually experiencing the friction of a fifth-dimensional reality that I didn't collapse into my 3D experience.
That is a phenomenal synthesis, yes.
Yeah.
The regret is the awareness of the branching path. Moving up from there, the sixth dimension is defined as the invisible spectrum of human emotions.
Like love, anger, things like that.
Love, anger, terror, compassion, all of them.
And again, the text is framing these not as localized chemical reactions, but as actual dimensions.
It frames them as pervasive fields of subtle energy. You cannot isolate love or anger on a surgeon's operating table.
Right, you can't cut it out with a scalpel.
Exactly. You can only see the neurological correlates, the oxytocin or the cortisol. But the emotion itself is an invisible, overarching field that exerts massive gravitational force on your reality. It dictates what 5D choices you make, which then dictates where your 3D body ends up.
Wow, okay. And what about the seventh?
Then we reach the seventh dimension, which is the intellect and the ego. This is your rationality, your imagination, and your fundamental sense of I. It is the organizing principle that observes the emotions and the choices and claims ownership over them.
Okay, that creates a very clear hierarchy. So the 7D ego organizes the 6D emotions, which drive the 5D choices, which unfold over 4D time, to actually physically move the 3D body. It's like a cascading mechanism.
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
So what is left for the final 4 dimensions?
The final category contains the energy and spiritual dimensions, and that spans 8 through 11. These are the most subtle, the least dense, and admittedly the most difficult to conceptualize. The 8th dimension is prana, or bioenergy.
Let's define prana scientifically, because I feel like that term often gets relegated to pure mysticism. What is the physical correlate here?
In the context of this framework, prana is the fundamental vital life force that precedes and generates the electrochemical signals rushing through your nervous system.
So it's the raw fuel.
Right, it's the raw energy potential before it becomes biological kinetic energy. Then we move to the 9th dimension, which the text describes as the collective unconscious or DNA memory.
Wait, so we're talking about something akin to epigenetics, or maybe like Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance. The idea that the evolutionary history of humanity, all the survival adaptations and ancestral trauma, is structurally baked into the fundamental fields of our biology.
That is the exact mechanism, yeah. It is a deep foundational layer of information that precedes your individual 7D ego. You inherit it.
Like downloading a massive software update you didn't ask for.
Exactly. The 10th dimension pushes even further out. It is described as the observer or the witness state.
What does that mean practically?
This is a state of pure, unattached awareness. If you have ever experienced a moment of intense clarity where you can mentally step back and just watch your own thoughts running, or, observe your physical body feeling pain without actually identifying with the pain, you are accessing the 10th dimension.
So you are basically watching the system operate from a point entirely outside the system.
Precisely. You are witnessing it. And finally, the 11th dimension is the singularity, cosmic oneness.
The very top of the ladder.
Yes. It is the ultimate realization and physical reality that the human being is not a separate, isolated organism, but an entirely integrated node of the universe. It is the point where all mass, energy, and consciousness perfectly merge. There is no separation between the observer and the universe.
Okay, I want to circle back to my initial question about the coffee, though.
Sure, yeah.
Because if I have a 10D observer state and a 9D ancestral memory field functioning inside me, why is my daily experience so overwhelmingly limited to just the 3D physical world and the 4D progression of time? Like, why am I blind to the rest of my own architecture?
The document utilizes a core mathematical concept of string theory, to explain this, and it's called compactification.
Compactification, okay.
In string theory, physicists propose that we only perceive 3 dimensions of space because the other extra dimensions are infinitesimally small. They are curled up into incredibly complex geometric shapes. They're called Calabi-Yau manifolds at every single point in our 3D space.
So they're there, we just can't see them.
Exactly. They are too small and densely packed to interact with our macroscopic senses. The source document argues that human biology and consciousness operate on this exact same principle. Your higher dimensions, the profound emotional fields, the ancestral data, the pure observer state, are curled up and hidden beneath the dense, heavy reality of your daily survival instincts.
Because navigating 3D space requires so much processing power. I mean, if I'm trying to cross a busy street, I need my 3D spatial awareness and my 4D timing to avoid getting hit by a car.
Exactly. You need to be present in the 3D.
Right. If I am suddenly overwhelmed by a 9D download of ancestral memories about avoiding predators on the savannah, I'm going to step out into traffic and get hit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The density of the 3D world demands your primary focus just for survival. The higher dimensions only reveal themselves when we intentionally quiet the lower dimensions, which is why meditative practices or moments of profound stillness are often required to unfurl them. They are latent, constantly running in the background.
That makes me think of a smartphone. Let's really map this out because I think the analogy holds up structurally. The 3D physical body is the hardware, right? The glass screen, the silicon chips, the titanium casing.
Yes, the tangible parts.
It is heavy, it is tangible,
Yeah.
but a smartphone is entirely useless without the 4th through 11th dimensions operating silently in the background. You have the operating system, the algorithms anticipating your keystrokes, the Wi-Fi connection pulling data from the ether, the cloud storage holding terabytes of remote memory. None of that is visible to the naked eye.
Not at all.
If you dissect a smartphone, you will never find a physical object called Wi-Fi.
Right, because the invisible forces are what actually animate the inert matter. Without the invisible software and the energetic connections, the physical hardware is just a very expensive brick of glass and metal.
It's just a paperweight. But the text doesn't just ask us to look at the invisible software. It forces us to fundamentally reconsider the hardware itself. As I was reading through part 1, I realized that the text argues we don't even fully understand the 3D physical reality we think we're experts in.
We really don't. The document asks us to deconstruct the 3D body by introducing a radical expansion of Einstein's famous equation, EMC2.
Okay, we all learned the basics of that in school. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. It proved that energy can become mass and mass can become energy. They are convertible.
Yes, but the text adds a crucial, almost prophetic law to this conversion. It states that matter and energy are an inseparable, eternal pair.
Meaning what?
Meaning, even when energy condenses into solid matter, the energy is not destroyed or gone. It is merely sleeping or latent inside the matter. And conversely, even when matter dissolves into pure energy, the mass is fundamentally latent within that energy.
Okay, hold on. Let me challenge that second half because it seems to directly contradict standard physics. The text is claiming that matter is inside pure energy, because standard physics teaches us that photons, particles of light, have absolutely zero rest mass. They are the textbook definition of pure energy. How can the text claim that matter is hiding inside a photon?
I know, it sounds contradictory, but the apparent contradiction is resolved when we look at the mechanics of energy density and gravity. The text argues that while photons traveling at the speed of light appear to have no rest mass, they do possess relativistic mass due to their momentum.
Relativistic mass, okay.
Right. And in modern quantum physics and general relativity, we know that an area with incredibly high energy density will actually warp space-time. It creates a gravitational pull.
And gravity is a fundamental property of mass.
Exactly. So if high-density energy can curve space-time and create gravity, the source concludes that the property of mass is secretly frozen or latent within the energy of light itself. It hasn't vanished. It has just changed its expression.
That is completely mind-bending. If light is secretly hiding the blueprint of mass, what does that mean for our physical 3D bodies? Because, we think of our bodies as solid objects.
It forces us to flip our understanding completely upside down. Take your 3D body, your muscles, your bones, the chair you are sitting on right now. They are made of molecules, which are made of atoms. And if you zoom in on an atom, what is it actually doing?
It's moving.
Right. The nucleus, the electrons, the quarks, they are all vibrating constantly. They never rest for a single microsecond. That constant frantic vibration is pure kinetic energy. Therefore, the text concludes that the 3D physical body is not solid matter at all. It's actually frozen energy vibrating in a highly confined atomic pattern.
The body is frozen energy. Wow. And conversely, the invisible forces driving the body, the bioelectricity, the chemical signals, the life force flowing through the nervous system, the text calls that flowing mass.
Yes.
So the physical body and the invisible life force are engaged in this eternal dance, constantly exchanging the masks of energy and matter.
And this isn't just abstract poetry either. The document applies this directly to the mechanics of how we interact with the world, specifically through human vision.
Okay, this was the part of the text that absolutely stopped me in my tracks.
It's incredible.
Please explain the quantum biological mechanism of vision as the text lays it out, because this completely shattered my understanding of reality.
Think about the biological and quantum process of seeing. Light, which is pure, raw photon energy from the universe, enters the pupil of your eye. It travels in the back of the eye and strikes the retina. The retina is packed with photoreceptor cells, right? Rods and cones.
Yeah, standard biology so far.
Now, these cells do not just act as transparent windows passing the light along into the brain. When a photon hits a molecule of rhodopsin inside a rod cell, it causes a physical change in the molecule's shape.
It bends it.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
This process, called isomerization, triggers an incredibly complex biochemical cascade.
Wait, so the biological rod in my eye literally catches a quantum particle of light and uses it to trigger a chemical reaction.
Yes. The retina entirely extinguishes the photon. It transforms that pure quantum light energy into an electrochemical format. It literally changes the currency.
Oh my God, it's like downloading a purely digital file and converting it into physical ink.
That is the perfect way to look at it. From there, your two eyes send these massive streams of two-dimensional electrochemical data down the optic nerve into total darkness at the back of your brain into the visual cortex.
Because there's no actual light inside the skull.
Exactly. It's pitch black in there. Your brain then takes these flat electrical signals, merges the two streams to calculate parallax and depth, and essentially projects a cohesive three-dimensional physical world for your consciousness to experience.
I am basically a real-time 3D printer.
You really are.
The universe is constantly feeding me raw, formless energy filament, which is light. My biological hardware catches it, converts it into data, and my brain's visual cortex rapidly prints out the physical 3D reality that I then navigate. The world isn't out there. I am literally typing out the physical world through my brain in real time.
That is the profound conclusion the source reaches. The 3D world we perceive is a mental screen where energy and matter play out their relationship. Light enters as pure energy, and your highly evolved biological systems translate it into the solid, heavy matter you perceive. You are generating the simulation.
Okay, but this raises a massive, glaring logical problem for me.
What's that?
If my 3D body is just an interplay of frozen energy and flowing mass, you know, a meat machine made of flesh and electricity translating light into reality, what is coordinating all of this?
Yeah.
Because a machine, like a literal 3D printer, cannot heal itself if its internal gears get scratched.
Very true.
A laptop cannot adapt its hardware based on the emotional resonance of a sad movie.
Right.
There are billions of cellular signals firing in my body right now just to maintain my core temperature and keep me sitting upright. How does the 3D machine know how to run itself?
Well, the text is very clear on this limitation. It states explicitly that a 3D body on its own is essentially a corpse.
A corpse.
Yes, it is a static biological robot. It may have the anatomical hardware, it may even have the residual bioelectricity, but it entirely lacks the overarching intelligence required to coordinate the chaos of billions of simultaneous cellular events. To function, the 3D machine requires a 4D master intelligence.
And earlier, you defined the fourth dimension as time. How does time act as a master controller for biology? Time doesn't think. It doesn't have an agenda.
In classical physics, we view time as a flat, straight line, the arrow of time pointing from the past to the future. But when applied to the internal human biological matrix, the text redefines the fourth dimension as dynamic flow and synchronicity.
Synchronicity.
Right. It isn't just the passive passing of seconds on a clock. It is the active, rhythmic biological intelligence. It is the circadian rhythm, the precise, synchronized timing that dictates exactly when a heart chamber must contract, when lungs must expand, or when a rush of white blood cells must be deployed to heal a sudden laceration on your arm.
So 40 isn't just a coordinate on a graph, it's the conductor of the biological orchestra.
Mm.
Without the conductor, the 3D instruments might have air flowing through them, but they just produce chaotic noise.
Exactly.
But here is where I need to push back on the biology side of things. Neural signals, the electricity traveling down our nerves to coordinate these actions, they take time to travel. Nerve conduction velocity tops out around, 120 meters per second?
Roughly.
That is fast, but it is definitely not instantaneous. So how does a 4D conductor manage billions of cells instantly if it's relying on slow biological wires?
You've hit on the exact reason why the text introduces what it calls information energy or biofields. The coordination required to maintain a human life cannot rely solely on 3D neural pathways. It operates on a level of macroscopic quantum entanglement within the body.
Quantum entanglement in a warm, wet biological system. I thought that only happened in super cooled lab vacuums.
Standard physics used to think that, yes. But the text suggests exactly that it happens in the body. It points out that if one single cell is subjected to sudden, intense danger, say, a severe burn, the entire biological system, the immune response, the hormonal cascade, the structural bracing of the muscles, it all reacts in a fraction of a microsecond.
Way faster than 120 meters per second.
Exactly. This systemic synchronization completely defies the physical speed limits of neural conduction. It implies that there's a 4D quantum information field that completely envelopes and interpenetrates the physical body. This field acts as a master network, coordinating all energetic processes instantaneously without relying purely on physical wires.
Okay, let me introduce an analogy here, leaning into the text's own framework to make sure I am visualizing this mechanism correctly.
Go for it.
The 3D body is like a highly advanced television screen. It displays the dense visual reality, and it has internal circuitry and electricity running through it. But the actual broadcast signal, the complex encoded information that tells the individual pixels what color to turn and when, and the remote control that regulates which channel is being received.
Yeah.
All of that exists in an invisible 4D frequency field. The TV doesn't generate the broadcast, it only receives it.
The television analogy is structurally perfect because it accounts for that transmission gap. Your 3D body is the receiver mechanism. The 4D biofield is the broadcast signal and the remote control. The 3D hardware is entirely subservient to the 4D software.
Okay, so 3D is dense physical matter, and 4D is the quantum information and synchronicity field. That firmly accounts for 4 out of the 11 dimensions.
Yes, it does.
But what about the rest? Dimensions 5 through 11, the thoughts, the emotions, the collective unconscious, the singularity. What are these bodies actually made of? Because you cannot have a dimension of reality that is completely devoid of substance, right? Yeah.
Where
is the mass and energy of these highly advanced dimensions hiding in our observable universe?
To answer that, the text connects human biology to one of the most profound and frustrating mysteries in modern astrophysics: dark matter and dark energy.
Ah, right. The massive cosmological accounting error.
Exactly.
The fact that everything we can observe with all of our scientific instruments, the billions in galaxies, the stars, the planets, you, me, the microphone I'm speaking into, it all makes up roughly 5% of the total mass energy of the universe.
Just 5%. The remaining 95% of the universe is classified as dark. We know it must exist because we can observe its massive gravitational effects on galaxies, holding them together when they should mathematically just spin apart.
Right.
But it does not interact with the electromagnetic force. It doesn't absorb, reflect, or emit light. We cannot see it, measure it, or touch it with any of our standard 3D tools. Here is where the source document makes one of its boldest claims. It posits that this missing 95% of the universe, the dark matter and dark energy, is not just empty filler in deep space.
What is it then?
It is actually the physical and energetic structural makeup of our remaining higher dimensional bodies.
Let me challenge that directly. Are you saying that human beings are literally made of dark matter?
In part, yes.
Because medical science has dissected the human body down to the molecular level for centuries, we have mapped the entire genome. If 95% of my multidimensional structure is dark matter, why hasn't a surgeon ever accidentally cut into it?
Because surgeons use scalpels made of 3D matter, and they use MRIs that rely on electromagnetism. By definition, dark matter does not interact with those forces. The text explains this through the principle of frequency and subtlety. The rule of this dimensional framework is this: as you move up the dimensional ladder, The frequency of vibration dramatically increases, and the matter becomes exponentially more subtle. It becomes less dense.
So it slips right through our standard tools, like a ghost passing through a solid wall.
Effectively, yes. For example, dimensions 5 through 7, the mind, emotion, and intellect bodies. The text suggests they are constructed of what it calls thought particles. In theoretical physics, these are sometimes referred to as tachyons.
Explain tachyons. Because if a thought is a physical particle, how does it operate outside of normal time and space?
Well, tachyons are a class of hypothetical particles that always move faster than the speed of light.
Faster than light.
Yes. And because they exceed the cosmic speed limit, they theoretically have what physicists call imaginary mass, and they experience time in reverse.
Time in reverse. That's hard to wrap my head around.
It is. But the text suggests that the psychic energy driving our 5D thoughts and 6D emotions operates on this tachyon-like frequency. This is why human consciousness can instantly jump to a childhood memory from 30 years ago or project into an imagined future, instantly defying the linear flow of 4D time. The particles of thought are simply not bound by the speed of light.
Thought particles moving faster than light. That gives a terrifyingly literal meaning to the phrase, "my mind is racing."
It really does.
So what about the even higher dimensions?
Moving higher, dimensions 8 through 10, the prana, the ancestral memory, and the observer bodies, are entirely devoid of dense mass. They're constructed of pure, incredibly high-frequency vibrations driven by the raw life force. And finally, we reach the 11th dimension, the singularity.
The oneness.
Yes, this is the origin point. It is the state where mass and energy perfectly and seamlessly merge into a single, indistinguishable state of infinite density and infinite subtlety.
Okay, I am struggling with the mechanics of getting from point A to point B here.
How so?
How do we get from a vastly complex 3D biological body with trillions of specialized cells, bones, and fluids, all the way up to a single featureless point of singularity in the 11th dimension? Doesn't a massive amount of structural information just get lost or destroyed when you move from 3D to 11D?
The text anticipates this exact question, actually, and introduces a concept it calls the law of conservation of dimension energy.
Okay.
In standard physics, the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only change form.
Right.
The document expands this law to apply across dimensional boundaries. The total mass, energy, and information of your incredibly complex 3D body doesn't vanish as you move up the dimensions. It profoundly compresses.
Oh, it's a data compression algorithm, like taking a massive folder full of 4K video files on a computer and zipping it into a single tiny archive file. The videos aren't gone, the complex data isn't destroyed, it's just mathematically packed into a much denser, less accessible format.
That is a highly accurate analogy. The complexity is conserved, but the geometry changes. According to the framework, the complex 3D body compresses down into a flat, two-dimensional wave membrane. And that 2D membrane compresses even further into the vibration of a single one-dimensional string.
A 1D string. We are officially back to string theory.
We are.
Let me bring in an analogy directly from the text here, because the visual it provides for this compression is absolutely stunning and really clarifies the entire framework. The text asks us to imagine a classic movie theater.
I love this analogy.
Right. That original one-dimensional string is the single, intensely bright beam of pure light originating at the very back of the projector. The two-dimensional dimension is the flat, transparent strip of film that the beam of light passes through. And the three-dimensional world, our physical reality of flesh, bone, and buildings, is the vast, complex, moving picture playing on the screen.
It perfectly illustrates the overarching architecture. The 11-dimensional bodies are not 11 separate layers stacked on top of each other like an onion. They are all simultaneous dimensional projections originating from that one fundamental 1D string.
But wait, we have been talking extensively about physics, energy, biology, and strings, but standard physics usually goes out of its way to exclude one very specific, very crucial element when it talks about the fundamental nature of reality.
Conscious.
Exactly. Consciousness. If a microscopic, vibrating, one-dimensional string is the origin point of my entire physical existence, how does my ability to think, to feel pain, to ponder my own existence fit into a vibrating mathematical line? Standard physics treats the universe as dead, unconscious matter governed by lined equations.
You have just highlighted what is arguably the most profound paradigm shift in the entire document. You are correct. Classical science treats consciousness as a highly improbable accidental byproduct of complex 3D biological computation.
Right, an emergent property.
Yes, but the source text argues the exact opposite. It argues that the universe is not a dead machine, it is a giant fundamental mind. And just as mass and energy compress and change form as they move across dimensions, consciousness itself condenses and shifts its operational parameters alongside them.
Okay, let's track that shift. How is my consciousness in the 3D reality functionally different from my consciousness in the 1D reality?
They operate under entirely different rule sets. Let's start with your baseline 3D consciousness. In the 3D world, rationality and logic rule supreme. Above all, duality is incredibly strong and strictly enforced.
What do you mean by duality?
In 3D, there is an absolute separation between the seer, which is you, and the seen, which is the microphone in front of you, the table, other people. You are locked inside your skull, looking out at a universe that is fundamentally separate from you.
Right.
Furthermore, because you are tethered to the 4D shadow of time, your consciousness is burdened by logic, by deep regret for past actions, and by severe anxiety regarding future survival. You feel isolated.
The 3D consciousness is the ultimate state of feeling like an isolated, vulnerable individual fighting against the universe.
Precisely. Now let's compress that data. Let's move down a dimension to 2D consciousness. The text suggests that in 2D, the fundamental concept of time completely disappears.
Just gone.
Gone. There is only the absolute, inescapable present moment. And because there is no past to remember and no future to anticipate, there is absolutely no logic, no complex planning, and no regret.
If you strip away logic, planning, and time, what is actually left of consciousness? What does 2D consciousness look like in practice?
It looks like pure, unadulterated instinct. Think of a wild animal, like a hawk reacting to a mouse in the grass. The hawk isn't calculating trajectory or worrying about whether it will catch a mouse tomorrow.
It just acts.
Yes, there's still a seer and a seen. The predator and the prey, so duality still exists. But there is no intellectual calculation mediating the interaction. It is pure, instantaneous, present-moment action.
Okay, so moving from 3D to 2D, we have stripped away time and logical thought, leaving only instinct. What happens when we compress the consciousness even further into the one-dimensional space?
At the 1D singularity, the final boundary collapses. Duality ceases to exist.
Meaning what exactly?
There is no longer a seer and a seen. There is no subject perceiving an object. There's no separate you looking at the universe. There is only pure, unified consciousness experiencing itself. Therefore, the text arrives at a staggering conclusion. The 1D string of string theory is not a physical thread of energy or matter at all.
Then what is it? If it isn't energy or matter, what is vibrating at the core of the universe?
It is a thought. The 1D string is a single, fundamental, vibrating thought.
The 1D string. The foundational building block of all physical reality is a thought.
I need to take a breath here, because that sounds incredibly poetic, but it also sounds like pure mysticism. We have officially left the realm of testable physics and entered philosophy, haven't we?
It sounds like mysticism until you look at how closely this framework aligns with some of the most cutting-edge, mathematically rigorous theories in real-world quantum mechanics.
Really?
Yes, the text specifically references this overlap. Have you ever explored Dr. John Haviland's work on the unified field?
I know the name, but walk me through the theory. How does a quantum physicist arrive at thought? Well, Dr. Haviland is a renowned quantum physicist who spent years mathematically comparing the properties of the unified field, which is the singular pre-matter field from which string theory posits all fundamental forces emerge, with the properties of the field of pure consciousness described in ancient contemplative traditions.
What did he find?
His mathematical analysis concluded that the unified field and the field of pure consciousness are not just similar, they share the exact same structural properties. He argues they are literally the same thing. The fabric of the universe is consciousness.
Wow.
And then, to ground this in human biology, the text points to the work of Nobel laureate Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Dr. Stuart Hameroff. They developed a model called the Oort-Shor theory.
The Oort-Shor theory, that's the one involving microtubules in the brain, right? I've always struggled to understand the exact mechanics of that.
It is complex but vital to this framework. Penrose and Hameroff theorized that consciousness does not arise from the complex chemical interactions between neurons, as standard neuroscience claims. Instead, they look deeper, inside the neurons themselves, at tiny, lattice-like structural tubes called microtubules.
Okay.
They suggest that these microtubules are structured perfectly to maintain quantum coherence, meaning they can hold quantum superpositions without them collapsing into classical states, even within the warm, wet environment of the brain. They theorize that consciousness is the result of orchestrated quantum objective reductions, basically vibrations happening inside these microtubules.
Wait, so they are saying that the physical structures inside my brain cells are essentially acting as quantum antennas.
Exactly. And the profound part is this. They suggest that the quantum vibrations happening inside your microtubules are directly connected to the fundamental Planck scale geometry of spacetime, the exact same scale where string theory operates.
Let me make sure I am fully wrapping my head around the implications of this. If the quantum vibrations in my brain are intimately connected to the fundamental vibrating strings of the universe, that means my consciousness is not a byproduct of my brain. My brain is a receiver for consciousness. Consciousness doesn't just produce thoughts, it is the thought. The entire physical fabric of reality is literally woven out of thought.
That is the ultimate synthesis. Yeah.
Imagine the process of weaving a physical shirt. You start with a single one-dimensional thread. According to this framework, that single thread is a fundamental thought. You take that 1D thought and weave it back and forth to create a flat, two-dimensional fabric. That fabric represents pure instinct.
Right.
And then you take that 2D fabric and tailor it, stitch it together, and give it depth, creating a three-dimensional shirt. That shirt is our dense physical reality. The entire physical universe, your body, this table, is just densely woven thought.
It is a complete inversion of how we are taught to view reality. The physical universe is a dense, heavy byproduct of consciousness, not the origin of it.
Okay, I accept the architecture. But on a practical level, I have to ask a deeply skeptical question.
Okay.
If my baseline, fundamental, one-dimensional state is just pure thought without the boundaries of subject and object, do I ever actually experience that? Because as I sit here right now, I feel extremely three-dimensional. I feel the weight of gravity. I feel separate from you. I am looking at you as an object. Do I ever get to visit this 1D state of pure unity, or is it just a mathematical abstraction?
You absolutely experience it. The answer the text provides is that you mechanically travel to this exact state every single night.
Sleep.
Sleep. The document insists that we must stop viewing sleep merely as a biological downtime where the brain clears out metabolic toxins and consolidates memories.
Which is what we're always told it is.
Exactly. While that happens in the 3D body, the text explains that the subjective experience of sleep is literal, mechanical dimensional travel.
Oh, wait, let me make sure I'm hearing you right. The text isn't using dimensional travel as a poetic metaphor for dreaming. It's arguing it is a literal mechanical shift in the physics of our consciousness.
It is a mechanical withdrawal of consciousness from the denser dimensions. Let's follow the trajectory of your awareness as you fall asleep.
Right.
When you close your eyes, shut out the 3D sensory input, and slip into a dream, your consciousness shifts out of the 3D and 4D constraints and enters the one-dimensional dream state.
I have to challenge that categorization, though. How can a dream be categorized as one-dimensional? There's a massive amount of complexity and action going on in my dreams. I see colors, I interact with people, I feel intense emotions. That feels like a 3D experience.
It feels 3D, but examine the underlying mechanics of where that reality is coming from. Let's say you are having a nightmare. You are running down a dark forest path, being chased by a tiger. You feel genuine terror. You hear the tiger breathing. But where did the physical tiger come from?
It was generated by my brain.
Where did the dark forest path come from? Where did the emotion of fear come from? And where did the version of you that is running come from?
Me. Oh, all came from me.
Every single element of that vast, complex reality is being generated by one singular source, your own consciousness. In a dream, the hard duality of 3D reality completely collapses. You are the tiger, you are the forest path, you are the terror, and you are the runner. The 1D string is the dream. Everything you experience is a localized projection of a single point of consciousness interacting with itself.
That makes perfect structural sense. In the 3D waking world, if a tiger chases me, that tiger is a biologically separate organism governed by its own DNA. But in the 1D dream world, the tiger is literally constructed out of my own thought particles. The subject and the object are the exact same thing.
Precisely. You have withdrawn into the 1D architecture. But as you know, strings don't vibrate eternally with the same intensity, and dreams do not last all night. This brings us to a concept the text introduces that sits even deeper, below the 1D state. It is the 0D dimension.
0D, a dimension of zero, absolute nothingness.
The absolute void, the cosmic blank slate. When the 1D string completely stops vibrating, when the fundamental thought ceases entirely, you transition out of REM sleep and enter dreamless, deep delta wave sleep. There is no tiger. There is no runner. There is no thought whatsoever. The text describes this as the cosmic slumber, where your fundamental conscious energy returns to the absolute source to be recharged. Wait. I have a critical logical challenge here that the text needs to account for.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the 1D string is a vibration of thought, and that vibration is the fundamental origin of my physical life, and the 0D state means that string completely stops vibrating, shouldn't I drop dead? If the vibration is the engine of life and the engine stops, the organism should die.
It is a brilliant paradox, and it is the exact biological riddle the text solves with its multidimensional premise. You are correct. If you were solely a one-dimensional entity, stopping the vibration would mean cessation of existence. But remember the foundational premise of this entire framework.
That we exist in 11 dimensions.
Exactly. You exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The separation of systems.
Yes. While your primary locus of consciousness has descended all the way down into the stillness of the 0D void to rest and recharge, your 4D biological master clock and your 3D biological machinery are still running. Your autonomic nervous system keeps your heart beating, keeps your lungs expanding, and keeps your cellular repair mechanisms firing. Your lower dimensions keep the physical lights on and maintain the hardware while your highest software reboots in the void. According to this framework, true biological death only occurs when the fundamental strings in all 11 dimensions cease their vibrations simultaneously.
That is an incredibly elegant solution to the mind-body problem of sleep. So my consciousness descends into the 0D void. I get a total cosmic recharge while the 3D autonomic system keeps the engine idling. What happens mechanically when the morning alarm goes off?
The text describes the act of waking up as nothing short of a massive internal Big Bang.
A daily, personal Big Bang.
Yes, and trace the progression. Your consciousness lifts from the absolute, featureless stillness of the 0D void. It sparks into a 1D vibration, perhaps your first fleeting waking thought or the fading fragment of a morning dream.
Right.
That vibration immediately expands and weaves into a 2D fabric of instinct. The primitive urge to stretch your muscles, the sudden awareness of a cold room. And finally, you open your eyes, the photons hit your retina, your visual cortex rapidly prints out the physical data, and you explode back into the dense 3D physical world, instantly inheriting the 4D burdens of time, logic, and schedule.
Every single morning when I open my eyes, I am recreating the entire physical universe from scratch.
From your subjective conscious experience, you absolutely are. In fact, the text makes a profound speculation about the actual astrophysical Big Bang of our universe based on this exact mechanism.
But what's the speculation?
Modern science confidently states that the universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old. But the text suggests that 13.8 billion years might just be how the timeline appears from a heavy, dense, three-dimensional perspective. From the perspective of the fundamental 1D string, where time operates entirely differently, the entire Big Bang and the entire history of the universe might have expanded and collapsed in a single infinite microsecond. Time dramatically dilates depending on which dimension you were observing from.
Okay. I need to take a massive breath here and give you, the listener, a moment to let all of this settle. Because over the last hour or so, we have journeyed from the basics of standard 3D space through a radical reinterpretation of Einstein's EMC2 into the idea that light hides mass, and finally arrived at the conclusion that I am a daily universe creator who mechanically commutes to the nirtheth dimension of the absolute void every single night. That is a staggering, monumental paradigm shift regarding what it means to be alive.
It radically and beautifully redefines the architecture of a human being. We are not small.
No, we really aren't. So let's synthesize this entire journey. The core takeaway from part one of this matrix is that we are absolutely not just 3D meat suits blindly navigating a cold, dead, uncaring universe. We are highly complex, 11-dimensional beings.
Exactly.
Our 3D bodies act as living, biological projectors for cosmic energy. Our thoughts are not just fleeting, meaningless electrical sparks in a wet brain. They are literal, physical 1D quantum strings that weave the very fabric of our reality. And the simple act of going to sleep is not just biological downtime. It is a profound, nightly journey back to the fundamental source of all creation.
And if you look at the ultimate implications of this framework, it empowers you as an individual immensely. Classical deterministic science often makes us feel incredibly small, like insignificant specks of dust floating in an infinite, uncaring void.
Yeah, just cogs in a machine.
Right. But this framework insists that the universe isn't a dead machine. It is a giant living mind. And the dense, heavy physical reality you experience every day is just the slowest, densest expression of fundamental thought.
Which means, and this is the realization that changes everything, if my thoughts are the actual 1D strings that eventually weave the 2D instinct and print the 3D fabric of my physical life, then consciously changing my 1D thoughts literally, mechanically alters my 3D reality.
That is the ultimate truth of the Matrix. You are not a victim of the simulation.
Yeah.
You are the architect of the simulation you are experiencing.
I love that. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final practical concept to mull over as you go about your day based on everything we've unpacked. We established that waking up every single morning is a personal, daily big bang, a moment where your fundamental consciousness expands from a zero-dimensional void to print out a full, complex 3D world.
It's a powerful thought.
Knowing that, what kind of universe are you going to actively choose to explode into existence tomorrow morning?
That is the ultimate question. The fundamental string of reality is entirely in your hands.
Thank you for joining us on this incredibly expansive deep dive into part 1 of The Matrix. Keep questioning the density of that 3D reality, keep zooming in on your own consciousness, and we'll see you next time.